when I was younger, I kind of looked at working in music and entertainment as being a very competitive thing, as if you're like everyone around you is competing against you.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, there's plenty of work to go around. You need to meet people. You need to be genuine with people. You need to lift up people and celebrate them for their accomplishments, because it really isn't you playing against them. It's not you versus them. It's we all kind of, we will rely on each other at some point,
Yeah.
if we're all working in the same industry. So not looking at it as a competitive sort of thing, but as a more of a community sort of thing. That's definitely worth noting, because everyone around you that's going to stick with it are just going to be your peers, and they're going to be the ones that you're going to rely on in the future. So,
welcome to the Vocal Lab. I'm Sarah Ramsey, and this show aims to pull back the curtain on the entertainment industry, where veterans give up-and-coming artists some of the information they wish they'd had when they were just starting out. Sort of a music industry primer, if you will. Thanks for joining us on the Vocal Lab. This is actually part 2 of our interview. So if you haven't caught part 1 yet, head back to the episode right before this one and get all caught up, and then join us back here. We'll see you soon. Talking about working in the studio, everybody's studio routine looks a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are really specific about what order they record things in, or, I know some people want to set deck the studio a certain way because it makes, and I'm not laughing at that or discounting that, because I actually tell students to, if that's going to make the difference when you go in and do your vocals, go ahead and put the fairy lights up and put the scarves up on the wall and do the things. No producer is ever going to bat an eye.
Nope.
If that's the thing that makes you comfortable in the booth and gets the great performance out of you, do it. Anyway, my question is, do you want to talk a little bit about your process in the studio when you're producing a record?
Yeah, I think that definitely touching on the or making sure that people feel so comfortable, and because you need to feel so comfortable to be vulnerable, right?
Exactly.
So in order to, like, when you're in this, or when I first meet an artist, we'll usually kind of just hang out here in the studio and we'll just listen to records, and we'll just find things that we maybe have common ground on. Like maybe they'll bring an artist to the table that I've never heard of, and maybe I'll find something that has a similar sort of feel or makes me feel a similar sort of way as when I'm listening to their references. And I think that references are the most important thing for me, to make sure that we're kind of all aiming for the same goal. If all of us have a different goal of what the song is supposed to sound like, it's never going to end up close to anyone's, like what they had initially intended it to sound like. Mm-hmm. So references are absolute key. From there, I would say, I really like when artists send me like an iPhone demo. I like when people produce things a little bit and send them over to kind of get an idea of what maybe the rhythm of the song is, or like what the main instruments are. But an iPhone recording is so honest, and it's a good way to be able to tell if it's a good song or if it's just an okay song with good production. Like it's that an iPhone recording is a big one for me. And then I would say, from there, we kind of just hang out here in the studio and we pick tempos, we pick keys, all that sort of the not so glamorous side of crafting a song. And we'll just try to push it. Like I found for a long time, a lot of my songs I thought were or not my songs, but songs that I'd worked for other people. I always thought that they were really good, and I was very excited about them. And then maybe I would listen to them a month later and be like, it's a little bit slow, or maybe that's a little bit too fast. So what I really like to do is I like to kind of push the song to the point where it kind of breaks. Like you push it so fast that it is now unrecognizable. And then you make it so slow that it's like, that's just not going to keep anyone's attention.
It's
and
a
then
dirge.
But then you kind of see where the limits of the song is, and then you can focus in on it. And sometimes, you speed it up and it's like, oh, that's a little bit weird, and it takes a little while to get used to it. so what I do is I'll just make it even faster. And then I'll make it faster. We'll get used to it being faster. And then when we bring it back to the original tempo, it just drags. So we can add on another few BPM to kind of spice it up a little bit or whatever.
Yep.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I do a ton of decoration here at the studio, although that is a good trick. I do know that Mike Frazier touched on that in your earlier podcast. Which is great. I'll probably use that from now on.
Well, I mean, for what it's worth, I also think that's a thing that doesn't always have to live in the producer's lap or the engineer's lap. I think that's a thing that can be up to the artist, but it can be opened up to them. If there's stuff that is going to make you comfortable, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think that because this space is a very small, non-intimidating little recording space, that it's easy to get people into feeling comfortable.
Yeah.
I think that when you're a brand new artist and you show up to a big commercial space, it is terrifying. I've had that feeling before. I know that feeling. And I'm always impressed when new artists go into studios and they perform, just as good as they would on as maybe being on a stage or in their rehearsal space. That's always a really impressive thing. But I know that definitely making sure people are comfortable enough to be vulnerable is key. And however you get there, it doesn't matter what you do, as long as you get there.
I think it's a funny thing, specifically as a singer. I mean, that's what I can speak to. But the first time I recorded an original project of mine, I was about 19 years old, and I was in college. I was up at Cap University in the jazz program, and I pulled in favors from a bunch of friends. I was super lucky because we had a recording studio at home. So I had access to that, but everybody was doing it as a favor. So from the engineer to all the players to everybody. And the track sounded fucking awesome. And I was so excited. But when it came time for me to go into the studio, and I'm laying this out because I want to say our family owned the studio. It was literally in my backyard. It was at our house. I spent tons of time in the studio. And when I went into that studio to sing my vocals, I was super, super nervous. And I listened to those tracks now and I can hear the nerves in my voice to this day. And it's just the reality, especially if you're a young, and I don't mean age, I mean green performer, artist. It's the nerves are there. It's part of the studio process, at least until you get more comfortable and more experience doing it. So those things that set you at ease matter so much because they affect the final performance so much.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I had all of the reasons to not be nervous.
Yeah.
And yet I was, I can still hear it.
Well, I mean, I go into studios all the time and I still get a little bit of nervousness, because it's a different space. It doesn't matter how many times you've even been in there. If you're in there with a new band or a new engineer or whatever, there's always a little bit of, you got to shake off the nerves a little bit.
Totally.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about when you are producing, how you approach the concept of storytelling in projects with artists when you're, producing a record or whatever, because it's that nebulous piece of connecting to the audience, but it's so important. So just interested in your process there.
Yeah. I don't do a ton of actual writing. I'm I'm not a lyricist. But I have had the pleasure of being in a lot of writing sort of sessions and help kind of develop it from a productions side, kind of as the songs are being written. And I think that when it comes to connecting with an audience, I think it's something that you kind of can feel right away. It doesn't take a professional musician to know that something's really resonating with them, you know? So, for me, if I'm in the room and I realize, wow, this is something that I would just want to put on when I'm driving or just listen to in my free time, then we're probably in the right direction. I'll try not to let any of the technical sort of things get in the way of really the song itself. I don't need to add a bunch of crazy interesting chords or unexpected notes to make it interesting. At the end of the day, it's a good song. It's gonna be a good song no matter how you treat it.
Yeah.
So I think that just kind of trusting your gut and saying, yes, this is a really good song. Let's make sure that we treat it with respect and not with our ego, not try to just make it something that it isn't because it's fancy or because it's kind of interesting or cutting edge at the moment, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not super heavy-handed when it comes to the production of stuff or the writing of stuff. I love to make this. I like to make suggestions, but I also like to tell the artists that I'm going to make 100 suggestions, and we're lucky if a few of them really stick. I really just want to throw ideas out there to kind of break you out of whatever it is that maybe you find repetitive. There's these really cool cards. You might have seen them before. They're called oblique strategies. It was this deck of cards that Brian Eno made back like in the 70s or something like that. And basically what it was is I think it's called 100 plus dilemmas. Or what is it? Yeah, it's 100 plus dilemmas. And basically the idea was that if you ever feel like you're kind of getting wrapped up into the same routine, you open up the deck, you pull one of the cards out and you read it, and it'll say things like, now imagine if it's underwater. And it really, it doesn't necessarily need to mean anything, but it's just to kind of snap you out of whatever that is that's making something feel maybe a bit too cookie cutter, or maybe I've actually already used that melody before in a song. So that's kind of how I view my job, is to hopefully give out more useful suggestions than imagine if you're underwater and upside down. But just to try to make people see it a little bit differently and see what we can accomplish. But I don't really care if they don't take any of my ideas. I don't really have any ego attached to that. I just want to see if that can be something that would improve anything,
I think I do similar things with students where, I'll get them to sing whatever song they're singing as though they are another artist.
Yeah.
Not because we're aiming for mimicry, but just because I'm trying to break a pattern of something. And the way I always view it is this is not intended to be the final destination. What I'm giving you is a stepping stone to find a new destination. And what you're describing sounds very much like the same thing to me, where you're just giving different stepping stones to get them to find a new destination potentially.
Absolutely. And with every question or suggestion that I make, I'm learning more about the artist too.
Yeah.
If they say, no, I don't like that idea because it reminds me of this. And noted, that artist does not like the way that this song or this artist made them feel.
Yep.
So we can, that's off the table now. Great. Now I understand it better. It really comes down to that first experience with that heavy-handed producer, not taking into consideration anything that we wanted to sound like. That is the farthest from what I would ever want to impose on someone else. It's just, here's some suggestions, here's some ideas. Let's make it comfortable. Let's enjoy our time. Because at the end of the day, we're making music. Let's not be too serious about it. Let's have fun. And let's make a good song.
Absolutely. Wearing your producer's hat, what do you think is important for new artists to know about the process? So meaning, what should they do on their end ahead of working with somebody like you in order to make that a really successful experience?
Have a listen to some of the stuff that I've done. See if you like it, because you might not. Maybe it's not that sound isn't gonna resonate with you. I try to not be too heavy-handed with like imprinting a certain sound on people, but there might be similarities there. There might be, maybe my music sounds a little bit more rootsy or Americana than someone else that's maybe a pop producer. Do your research, try to figure it out if that sound is what you can see yourself as being, or at least, a roadmap of maybe this is kind of a direction that we could take a song. The last thing you want to do, like I said earlier, is bring someone into your creative world that you aren't completely aligned with. And meet a bunch of producers, chat with a bunch of people, talk to other songwriters and singers and see, did you work with this person? What was your experience like? Don't just jump into it just because, I've got a couple of buttons and knobs and microphones and stuff like that. Doesn't mean that this and me is going to be right for your sound. I hope it is. And I would love to make lots and lots of more records with as many people as humanly possible. But just for your own sake. And when you start looking into other producers, you'll also maybe learn a little bit about different sounds or, I wonder how they did that or whatever it might be. So that's the big one for me.
And I mean, that's a thing. This is another question that I tend to ask, like all the producers and that I've had on, I've asked that vein of question. And I think that's been everybody's answer. Pretty much the same, is that make sure you listen to other stuff that I've done ahead of time, because if you don't like it, we shouldn't work together. Don't hire me if you don't like what I've done. But also the comment has been like, it's amazing that actually does happen, where because they had a friend. So to your point about like talk to other musicians who've worked with you. Yes. But I've had other producers say like, they had a friend who hired you, so they just hired you, but without listening to anything you've done. So yes, talk about the experience, but also do the listening for yourself, because if it's not your style, if it's not your jam, somebody else out there is, and you're going to be happier with the experience and happier with the result.
Absolutely. And I think that as you start, as you start meeting more producers that have been, doing it for long enough, people will be very upfront with you if they think that you're going to be, or that the two people, yourself as the producer and the artist. I'll be very upfront if I think that the working relationship will be beneficial to them, because it's definitely not doing myself any good for taking on a project that I don't think that I can achieve what the artist wants to do, and it's definitely not doing them any good either. I think that probably just comes with time and experience. I probably would have just taken every job and any job that was handed to me 10 years ago, but now I know kind of what my sound is. I know what I can what I can do for other people, and I don't want to make people feel like I did less than what was promised for their project.
Yeah. Talking about the realities of life on the road, working on the road with the show, about the impact of life on the road on your body and your creativity and just the realities of recording. You've been to all these exotic locales, but you want to talk about the realities about making music for the show on the road?
The reality is that it is incredibly difficult. Not just from a technical aspect, but like you said, it's tough on the body too, because the way that it works for us, at least, is we land in a new country. And over the last 3 or 4 seasons, we didn't even know where we were going because of COVID. We had to all charter the same jet. So it wasn't like the original Amazing Race where people were running through the airports. Everyone's on the jet, just kind of stay in our own bubble, right? So, so basically we land, we find out where we are, and we set our clocks forward or backwards or wherever, right?
Wow.
And and then basically we hit the ground and we start working. And me and the guy that does the camera work, that's similar to kind of like, because I do the specialized audio stuff, he does the specialized camera stuff. So he does all the time lapses, the really cool, like money, like beautiful shots for like the opening of the show and whatnot. So if I don't have any music to do in the morning, I'll go with him. We'll set up some cameras. We'll do some time lapses. We will work until, well, we're probably going to have to stay out until well past sunset. And then I'd go to sleep. We would wake up at 5:30 in the morning. We'd go get a COVID test. I'd go out and I'd start working with a band. I'd finish recording them. I'll go back to the hotel. I'll mix into the wee hours of the evening. I'll deliver it that night. And then next morning we show up at the airport and we fly to the next place. Sometimes it's longer. Sometimes we've had like 3 or 4 days in a location, but it's usually really, really, really fast. And with the, and you also don't take a day off. You don't have a single day off. So it's just every single day. And then, compiling the tiredness of the previous day, and then also the time zone changes, and also being on an airplane where I can't sleep on airplanes. So I just kind of sit there in shock and just like wait till land, and so it gets really, really tiring. So you need to be very conscious of trying to like just be healthy, like, because you're running on fumes by the end of it. You can't.
It's just compounding sleep deprivation.
Yeah. It's not like these things of like maybe Hollywoodized tour stories of like people going out and you're partying every night and this and that. Like, if you have one party night, the rest of the show is just gonna suck. Like, it's gonna be a drag, all the way to the end. So you have to be very, very. You just have to stay healthy, and you got to make sure you're getting enough sleep, and it's difficult. And then also trying to stay in contact with your family back home. Sometimes you're 8 or 10 hours ahead of everyone else. So you got to wake up maybe at a certain time to have a phone call with them. It's tough. I mean, it's the greatest job ever. I love it, but it is incredibly difficult. We're lucky because we do about 15, I think it's usually about 15, sometimes upwards of 20 countries per year with the show. Wow. Or at least locations, I should say. But that definitely comes at a price. And that price is you do not get a day off and you do not sleep, but you get to live out your wildest dreams on the road.
Yeah. How many seasons have you done now?
Only 3, I believe, that have been released. 4, I believe, in total, because there's another one coming up. And then I'm leaving in a month, I believe, for another one. Mm-hmm. We do 2 a year. Mm-hmm. And yeah. It's a lot.
No kidding. No kidding.
Yeah. I do have, I wanted to share one of the wild stories of the show.
Please.
Was that the grand finale of one of the seasons was in Nashville. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot wait for what they have planned for us. And I found out that they'd brought in the Nashville Film or Symphony Orchestra. And we were in the Municipal Auditorium, and they asked me if I'd be willing to engineer and record the theme song for the show for them to use with the orchestra.
So
I was
cool.
like, yeah, that sounds great.
So cool.
I don't
and
care.
You're in a city where you can get extra gear if you need it.
That's right. Yeah. So I called Blackbird Studio, and I rented a ton of microphones from them, and it was probably the highlight of my life so far, career-wise, getting to work with them. It was so difficult because I think I was in Petra in Jordan. I flew in to Nashville and I landed there. The orchestra showed up maybe a couple hours later. We had everything sort of set up. Literally, I was doing the input list on the plane to Nashville. calling the producers, before or like right when I arrived, saying, "Hey, have we received our rentals from Blackbird Studios? Can we get a few more hands on?" They were literally still building the stage.
Oh my God!
Because everything's so like we've got these tiny little windows to do these incredible things.
Yeah,
and the stage was still being built. And the orchestra was arriving in like 2 hours. And, I was just asking anybody that was there with a set of hands, "Hey, can you guys help me put up some microphones? This is a U87. This is a Coles, Coles go on the horns, 87s go on the cellos,
Oh, God.
And it was crazy because there was so much pressure leading up to it. And then all the lights go out. The contestants run in. They have to do some sort of test, or they have to do a challenge. And I think this is the final challenge before they win $1 million. So a lot of pressure. And they run in, and it's absolute chaos. And the orchestra plays perfect, and we engineer it, and it sounds fantastic. And I'm so proud of it. And it just felt like it just finished in a blink of an eye. It was over. Now all the lights go on. And now we got to tear everything out. It's 2:00 in the morning at this point. I think by the time I get out of there, and then I have a flight to Denver that leaves in an hour and a half after it.
Oh my God.
So that's basically the show.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I mean, it is filled with some of the most impressive, inspiring people. Like there's literally teams, and there's camera people and audio people that literally run after the contestants. And when you're seeing this show and you're seeing the contestants run and the camera's following them, there's a camera guy that's running after them with a big Sony camera on his shoulder. Yeah. And you're wondering, oh, wow, that's so interesting. They've got so many different shots and angles on the same team. That's the same camera person. So when you're seeing these teams run this way, and then all of a sudden you see a cut of them running the other way, there's a camera guy that's run past them. These guys are going as fast as they can. God. The camera guy sprints past them, and they'll get the reverse shot and follow them backwards, wherever they're going. It is, there's some of the most incredible people on that show.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's astounding. So all of the like athletic capability that's required of the contestants is required twofold from the camera people.
Yeah. No, and these are the people that they are the. If you ever use these things, there's like a bicycle and a running thing called a Peloton, and there's these little screens where they kind of mimic where you're going. You're doing the Boston Marathon or whatever. These camera people on The Amazing Race are the people that film those things for Peloton.
Oh, wow.
So they actually run the Boston Marathon with the cameras that they can put onto the Peloton. So these are the people that I'm around. And so it is just constantly so inspiring to be around these people. I can't say enough good things about them.
No kidding. That's just so cool.
Yeah.
So my guess is that you have just answered my question. I mean, my next question was going to be, what's the most unexpected way you've used your talents in the course of your career?
Yeah, this is definitely it. I mean, I truly love recording music, and it is, one of my favorite things in the entire world. And then just to add on all the complexity of traveling while doing it it was completely unexpected, but I have so much gratitude for the opportunities that came, to allow me to do those things. I feel very lucky, very blessed.
Well, and I think you really have to be I know we sort of touched on it before talking about what a MacGyver you have to be to do the job that you do on that show. But, I think a lot of audio engineers actually are really good problem solvers anyway, because it is such a big part of the job.
Yeah.
But the specifics of taking that job and putting it in the context of The Amazing Race and doing all of it on the road, there is such a huge problem solving on the fly piece of that. Like, it's amazing that you were the first person that they asked, and you were the right guy for that job.
Yeah, I don't think that I did have those skills until I got thrown into it, to be honest. I think I kind of had to learn it. And I think that that's something that that's worth noting is that a lot of times opportunities will come up and maybe you don't know exactly all the ins and outs, but you can absolutely find the resources to figure it out. There's nothing that's going to stand in the way of you and achieving what you want to achieve. Sure, I never recorded music on the race, but I definitely trusted my instincts that I could figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, there were other people that had recorded music for the show before. I just didn't have any contact with them. So I didn't know what the ins and outs were. So I didn't necessarily create the job, but I definitely had to figure it out how it was going to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything, so working in the industry that you do, and you can talk about this in any slant that you want to, whether we're talking about working at home in the studio or working on the road the way you have, is there anything that you see often sort of missed or misunderstood by artists or producers or people in the field that would make the experience better or the more successful?
When I was younger, I kind of looked at working in music and entertainment as being a very competitive thing, as if you're like everyone around you is competing against you.
Mm-hmm.
In reality, there's plenty of work to go around. You need to meet people. You need to be genuine with people. You need to lift up people and celebrate them for their accomplishments, because it really isn't you playing against them. It's not you versus them. It's we all kind of, we will rely on each other at some point, if we're all working in the same industry. So not looking at it as a competitive sort of thing, but as a more of a community sort of thing. That's definitely worth noting, because everyone around you that's going to stick with it are just going to be your peers, and they're going to be the ones that you're going to rely on in the future. So,
I think it's funny. I think the industry is perceived as being a very competitive industry, and in some ways it is.
Sure.
But I think, that's a question that I ask around the issue of competition versus collaboration or community to most of my guests. And the overwhelming answer from people is that their experience is far more collaborative and far more about the community and supporting each other and working with each other and lifting each other up than it is around competing with each other. And I think that maybe that's a bit of an outside looking in versus inside looking out, two different perspectives. Because I think when you're on the inside, I think most of us are really rooting for each other and trying to, I know if I can't have the gig, the number one thing I want to do is get somebody I know and love or respect and value. I love seeing it go to them.
Me too.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a great way of looking at it. I think that comes with experience.
Yeah.
But I wish that I would have known that a little bit earlier on.
Yeah.
I don't think that I was ever like malicious or like trying to take a job from someone else. But I wish I would have looked at it more as a collaborative community sort of thing rather than it being competitive.
Well, like you say, I do think that comes with experience, but I think that's also why it's important to talk about for the people who are up and coming and can benefit from those of us who have a little more experience.
Well, good on you for doing this, because I wish that this is something that I would have had access to when I was younger, because I said, I didn't really have a roadmap or a blueprint of what this would look like. And I also didn't really know anyone. And at the time, that you couldn't just listen to a podcast. You couldn't really, there just wasn't those same resources. So
yeah,
I think that what you're doing is such a valuable thing for the next generation of people.
Thank
and so
you.
honestly, this is a wonderful thing that you're doing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm hoping to answer the questions that the emerging artists and the emerging generation within the industry, they might not even know what questions to ask yet. Because when you're young, you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. So you don't even know what to ask. And, so that's what we're trying to do, is open that up and make those answers a little bit more readily available. Because just like you, and I grew up in a musical family, and I still didn't feel like I knew what to do or who to ask or any of that. So thank you.
That's great.
Well, where can people find you, Jeff? Web, social media, upcoming projects, all the things.
I mean, chances are coming to a city near you at some point. You can find me on Instagram. I don't have a personal Instagram, but I have my studio's Instagram, which is Light Machine Records. You can add me on Facebook or send me a message, I guess, or you can email me, lightmachinerecords at gmail.com. And send me some demos, and let's hear what you've been working on. I'm always so excited to meet new people. And it doesn't matter what level of experience or how many years they've put into it. I think that everyone's got so much value, no matter what their story has been. So reach out. I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
I love it. Well, we'll put all of that in the show notes so that people can find it easily. Yeah. And as we go, anything else you think is really important for up and coming artists to know that we haven't touched on?
I think we touched on a lot of really good stuff.
We did. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.